Governor of Ohio, Emma and Reese, my children, and Karen. Love you, girls. Thanks for watching tonight. By the way, I think I actually flew on this plane with Ronald Reagan when I was a congressman, and his goals and mine really pretty much the same. Lift Americans, unify, give hope, grow America, and restore it is to that great shining city on a hill. Yes, he was a great one, and I learned much from watching him. The most important thing, hope to Americans, unify, lift everyone in America. You know, if I were sitting at home and watching this back and forth, I'd be inclined to turn it off. I mean, people at home want to know across this country, they want to know what we're going to do to fix this place, how we're going to balance a budget, how we're going to create more economic growth, how we're going to pay down the debt, what we're going to do to strengthen the military. So we've just spent 10 minutes here. We have a lot of issues coming up, sir. But wait a minute, with a lot of ad hominem. Now, I know that it may be buzzing out there, but I think it's important we get to the issues, because that's what the people want, and they don't want all this fight.
The phenomenon going on in this race is that the political outsiders in the race, Dr. Carson, Donald Trump, Carly Fiorina, all together have majority support in the polls. Governor Christie, I want to ask you about something that Dr. Carson said the other day. Dr. Carson said campaigning is easier for him because he's not a politician. He can just tell the truth, therefore, while politicians, quote, have their finger in the air to see and do what is politically expedient. Governor Christie, tell Dr. Carson, is that a fair description of you?
Well, I know Ben doesn't think that about me. I'm sure he was talking about one of the other guys, not me.
Let me just say this. First of all, I think it's a bad agreement. I would never have done it. But you know, a lot of our problems in the world today is that we don't have the relationship with our allies. If we want to go everywhere alone, we will not have the strength as if we can rebuild our relationships with our allies. Now, this agreement, we don't know what's going to happen in 18 months. I served on the Defense Committee for 18 years. I've seen lots of issues in foreign affairs and in terms of global politics. You have to be steady. Now, if they cheat, we slap the sanctions back on. If they help Hamas and Hezbollah, we slap the sanctions back on. And if we find out that they may be developing a nuclear weapon, then the military option is on the table. We are stronger when we work with the Western civilization, our friends in Europe, and just doing it on our own, I don't think is the right policy.
Thank you, Governor Kasich. I want to go to Senator Paul. I want to go to Senator Paul. Senator Paul, the White House is rolling out the...
No, I want to say something about what the Senator just said.
And then
let me suggest to you, we believe that we operate better in the world when our allies work with us. President Bush did it in the Gulf War. We work better when we are unified. Secondly, nobody's trusting Iran. They violate the deal, we put on the sanctions, and we have the high moral ground to talk to our allies in Europe, to get them to go with us. If they don't go with us, we slap the sanctions on anyway. If they fund these radical groups that threaten Israel and all of the West, then we should rip up the deal and put the sanctions back on. And let me make it clear. If we think they're getting close to developing a nuclear weapon and we get that information, you better believe that I would do everything in my power as the commander-in-chief to stop them having a nuclear weapon. We can have it, and we can have our allies, and we can be strong as a country, and we can project across this globe with unity, not just doing it alone. That is not what gets us where we want to get as a nation.
Senator Cruz.
Jake, there is no more parenthood. I don't know many people in America who don't think that we should, and in my state, we're trying to figure out how to get it done because we are threatened with the federal government taking all of our Medicaid money away. I think there's a way to get this done by giving governors the ability to be able to act to defund Planned Parenthood. But when it comes to closing down the federal government, we got to be very careful about that. When we shut the government down, if we have a chance of success, and it's a great principle, yes, the President of the United States is not going to sign this. And all we're going to do is shut the government down, and then we're going to open it up, and American people are going to shake their heads and say, what's the story with these Republicans? So I think there is a way to get to cutting off the funding for Planned Parenthood. I was in the Congress for 18 years, balanced the budget, cut taxes, got it done, changed welfare, went around the president to get welfare reform done. There are ways to do it without having to shut the government down, but I'm sympathetic to the fact that we don't want this organization to get funding, and the money ought to be reprogrammed for family planning, in other organizations that don't support this tactic. But I would not be for shutting the government down because I don't think it's going to work out.
Thank you. Senator Cruz, I would just...
Kasich, I want to come to you. I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you. Let me ask the question. You can use it the time however you want.
Okay, Jay.
Donald Trump says that the hedge fund guys are getting away with murder by paying a lower tax rate. He wants to raise the taxes of hedge fund managers, as does Governor Bush. Do you agree?
Now, I don't at this point in terms of changing the incentives for investment and risk-taking, but let's just stop for a second. There's one person on this stage that does have a record. I'm the only person on the stage and one of the few people in this country that led the effort as the chief architect of the last time we balanced the federal budget. We also cut taxes. And when I left Washington in 2000, we had a $5 trillion surplus and the economy was booming. I'd spent 10 years of my life to get us to that point. Went out in the private sector. It was a great experience and went into Ohio and took an $8 billion hole and turned it into a $2 billion surplus. We've had the largest amount of tax cuts of any sitting governor. We've grown well over 300,000 jobs. You see, I've done it in both places. I'm the only one here that's done it in both places. It took a lot to get us to a balanced budget. It was legitimate, it was real, and we negotiated it. A lot of what we're talking about here tonight is, I'm going to take this position and that position. You know what? At the end of the day, America's got to work. We got to figure out how we come together to deal with this, with our fiscal problems, because when we deal with that, we create a stronger economy for everybody. People have a chance to rise. So, you know, when we think about how we make a choice, it's the person that lands that plane. It's not somebody that talks about it. It's about the person who's done it. And I've done it in both places, and I did it including people in the other party, and that's how we were successful, and that's how I will be president, using that experience to drive this country forward.
Governor Huckabee, I want to bring you in on the question of hedge fund managers and taxing them. You have said that you are bothered by the fact that hedge fund managers...
People still have to get to know me, so I want to spend my time talking about my experience, reforming welfare, balancing budgets, cutting taxes, providing economic growth when I was in Washington, turning Ohio around, $8 billion in the hole, $2 billion surplus, up over 300,000 jobs, big tax cuts, strengthening our credit. All those things matter. But you know, I as a young man, in my first election in 1978, I defeated an incumbent Democrat. I defeated an incumbent Democrat in 1982, running on the Reagan program. I was the only Republican in America to defeat an incumbent Democrat that year. And then when I won for election to governor, I was the first Republican to defeat an incumbent in 36 years, and the first person to have never run statewide, out of politics for 10 years, to beat an incumbent. That hadn't happened for 96 years. So we'll get to the point where we'll talk about Hillary Clinton or whoever the nominee is record. But right now, I want to give people a sense of hope, a sense of purpose, a sense of unity, a sense that we can do it. So, you know, with you at the end of the day, I'm going to continue to talk about my record because do you ever notice when people run for office, they run for president, they make a lot of promises, they don't keep them. I don't intend to do that, and I'm going to be out there pushing it out. Don't worry about me and Hillary. That'll all work out. And I'm from Ohio. I called for boots on the ground many months ago in a coalition with our friends who share our interests. You know, you win a battle with the military. And when we go somewhere, we need to be mobile and lethal. We need to take care of business and we need to come home. But we face also a bigger war. And you win the bigger war with a battle of ideas. You wonder why young people and educated people, rich people, schooled people have tried to join ISIS. Western civilization, all of us need to wake up to the fact that those murderers and rapists need to be called out. And in Western civilization, we need to make it clear that our faith in the Jewish and Christian principles force us to live a life bigger than ourselves, to be sinners in justice, so that we can battle the radicals, call them out for what they are, and make sure that all of our people feel fulfilled in living in Western civilization. This is a giant battle in the world today.
Since everyone has...
Kasich.
It was probably not maybe legal, but I would pick Mother Teresa, the lady that I had a chance to meet, a woman who lived a life so much bigger than her own, an inspiration to everyone when we think about our responsibility to love our neighbor as we love ourselves.
Governor Christie.
I think the
one now, with my detail, they call me Unit 1. My wife says, you'll never be Unit 1. I'm Unit 1. You're Unit 2.